everything from questions about cures to homes on cul-de-sacs, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb in Real Estate Show with Stan DeFreitas, the dad, and James DeFreitas, the son. For the next hour, call in with your questions about gardening, your favorite veggies, and growing your profits in real estate. Call them anytime at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we are glad that we're with you. Of course, I am the dad, Stan, and my wonderful son.
And of course, I am James DeFreitas, and we are here every week. And I want to mention to people there is a free resource. You can go to our website, askmrgreenthumb.com. It's ASKMR greenthumb.com. Click on the Ask link at the very top of the page. You can submit those to us directly through the website. We're pretty good at making sure that we get back to people's questions. One of the things that we like is if you take the time to send the photo, then I can, it's easier to find out what's going right or wrong in your yard. So if you have a bug problem, or if you're trying to find a bug ID, you get close to the bug and take a good photo of it, then we can take a look at that and get back to you. It's a free resource for you, and we'd like to have that kind of engagement. And the questions I have for you is, as a matter of fact, before we even started today's show, we had someone here from the station come in and ask a question about fungus. And, as you were you always like to make the statement that fungus is among us.
It is.
And so why don't we talk a little bit more about funguses? Because even in my yard, I've noticed areas where I didn't normally get mushrooms a whole lot, but now I'm getting more because I've got a lot of shade going on, and I'm watering all the time.
A couple of things. We go back to fungus. We can call a single fungus, or fungi. It would be multi-fungi. If we go back to the biblical idea of creating the earth with rocks and molten as it was formed, one of the wonderful things about fungus is that it can break things down. It's sort of the garbage collector of the world, but it takes rocks and stuff. These huge rocks were broken down by fungi, and that really helped create life. Now, fungi are their own phylum, if you will. They're animals, there's plants, and then there's fungi. So when you think of it, there's really the three major, kingdoms, if you will.
Sure.
And we think of fungi, of course, white mushrooms that we eat and we love in our pastas or spaghettis or what may use. There's all kinds of fungi. Some of them are good, but I will tell you, in every yard, there are probably millions, if not billions, of spores of fungi that are out there. And when conditions become right, they are there to start to do their thing. I looked at some grass yesterday, had fungi on it. Now, I think they also have chinch bug, which is odd because chinch bug typically is in a dry area. Fungi is normally in the wetter area. Now, the lady we talked to today, I think she definitely has higher fungi. She has mushrooms growing. That probably tells me that area, but one of my suggestions was to put a tuna can out there, cat food can.
Or a rain gauge.
Rain gauge. You can go to the door and buy a rain gauge and start to measure your system. Just because the whole system is set up doesn't mean that it's even. In fact, most of the time it's not totally even.
Right.
Some areas are more water, some areas are getting almost none.
Right. And she even said, I think it's a good point to bring out, which is that, in one portion of your yard, you could be getting too much water, and the other portion of the yard could be desert, and then you also have to look too, as the sun travels throughout the day. It's much more complicated, but then, I think people want to make it simple, and I like simple, but yards are anything but simple. And when you're having a problem, it's because you don't fully understand the ecosystem that is taking place. And I think that's kind of the issue, is that we tend to, one of the things I've noticed is human nature is we tend to want to fix something without really understanding what it is that we're trying to fix, because we don't really understand the problem.
And I think that's very important. So I would think that we can identify fungi, but then we have to figure out what to treat with.
Mhm.
And first, you can go to Google all you want, but if you don't know what to look for, it's like so many other problems in life. You can kind of look and it says it could be this and this and this and that.
Right.
And
It's a guess.
somebody else is selling you miracle foo juice. I looked at a condo yesterday for my cousin who's down in St. Pete, condo down on the water. But one of the things, they had a lot of roof problems, so I think they cut their funds for the grass, for
Right.
the landscaping part.
Right.
And I understand to do that. We're
Yeah,
really,
looking for ways to,
we have to put the roof on first.
right, and that is more important.
So I looked at the roof. It looked like, fly-by-night roofing do the roof job. So I'm not so sure.
Get her done roofing.
Get her done.
If there's an actual get her done roofing, you
Yes.
probably do great work.
Yeah, we are not picking on any one company, and there are many great roofing companies. And in fact, if we see somebody that wants to sponsor with us, let us know. I'd like to go look at some of theirs, and I can tell real quick. And James, even more so than I, since you helped run a crew at one point building homes, knowing what you're doing makes a difference. And when I looked at the grass yesterday, I said, well, how has anybody measured the water? Well, no. I said, well, you've got areas here that are dry. That area there looks wet. And I said, dry, that looks wet. And I said, since we're going into the dry season now, the dry areas will start to show up. And typically chinch bug will show up. They have St. Augustine.
Right.
And one lady said, well, I wasn't sure. Maybe you start adding in different kinds of grasses, it doesn't together. It looks like a hodgepodge. Oh. And I said, well, who's doing the spraying? And she goes, well, we're doing herbicide work now.
Okay.
Like, okay, but the problem is you're losing half your grass because you've got chinch bug.
Well, the good news is they have less weeds.
Yeah, they've got more room for weeds. And she goes, I said, well, who's the company? Well, it's kind of a lawn guy. And I said, well, technically, lawn guy's not supposed to be doing pest control.
But I do think that there is you can get a just a weed spray.
You can if you're doing Roundup license. That doesn't entitle you to be doing spray for chinch bugs.
Right. Anything outside of
fungus. That. But what happens is often the condo goes, well,
could you do it?
Could you do it? Yeah. And if they buy the material themselves, then sometimes have the guy apply it. But that's not what's happening. The guy's going out and he's buying the stuff.
Right.
He doesn't know what he's got. He's not sure it's bug or if it's fungus. And so he's hitting for weeds.
Right. So you're sort of looking to fix a problem you have to understand. And the issue that we find in a lot of people yards is that providing a treatment for a problem they don't have, and so the problem, so it gets worse because it's not actually being treated. And matter of fact, I might mention too is we're treating a little poinciana, and again, beautiful tree, but since we're sticking on the fungus theme, that's what we identified was the culprit. And one of the things that was interesting about this particular tree is the customer client. We went up to the tree. You could smell a dirt-like smell, and that's kind of the fermentation process.
It's very much it's a yeast, which is a fungi,
right?
And so they had that told me that they also had some insects because it had a little bit of boar activity and it's a very soft wood,
right,
on the Royal Poinciana, and it also had fungus too. Often there are multiple things that will come in, and one thing starts to happen, and then another, and it kind of reminds me of somebody saying, well, how did the person die? Well, they died because they were on their back for 80 days at the hospital, and at the end, the pneumococcus, they got pneumonia, and it wound up killing them. But what got them there to begin with?
Right,
stroke, whatever it may be that caused them the severe problem.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, now we treated a number of things in that tree.
Right.
besides rinse.
Right.
Because we'll go, well, I fertilized, a year ago. Here's a hard part of a bag I still have in the garage.
Right.
How much did you put out? Well, I put about a cup.
Yeah. A lot of people, to me, it's the repetition of the right amount. But again, it goes back to the original idea. You and I could have gone out to this beautiful royal poinsettia tree, and we could have sprayed it just with pesticide. And that might take care of the secondary infection that's taking place because of insects getting into the tree, but it doesn't take care of the root problem of having a fungus pathogen taking over and this tree was exhibiting some severe pock marks that are very unusual. I personally had never seen a tree do that before. Now you may have.
I have.
But I have not seen a tree do that before since I'm
kind of like circle pock marks on the tree.
Yeah, and they were rather large too. I want to accurately describe it. They were about, some of them I think were 8, 9 inches and 5 wide. I mean,
they're and I might say, good for you. They were actually. I'll move that here. You can see it too.
I appreciate that. But when you went out there to look at this tree for this client, you picked up because what we typically do is we'll put the injection in, and then we'll give it a couple of weeks, and then out, and we'll pick up the injector too. And it was the update when you went out there?
Well, it looked like all of them had fired off. They'd actually been in a few days longer than I normally would like. But normally, now James does most of the work putting the injectors in because it's hard for me to move around as well as it used to be.
Sure.
So I must say that thank God that I had a son that is so helpful, because
I try to be.
For me, I can get down somewhat, but it's hard to get back up. My movement is compromised, and it's funny, when you're a youngster, you don't even think there's a day in your life that you're ever going to not be 18 and can move all over the court.
Right. Until the day that hits you and you have more trouble. And one of the things that we're talking about right now is we're talking about funguses and how that relates to some of the issues that you can encounter in your yard. And of course, that means we're going to go pay some bills. But of course, don't change that dial. We will be here for you.
Stay with us here on AM 860, The Answer.
Want to talk real estate? Call James at 727-254-7127 or go online, aflre.com.
Why choose Stafford Tree Service? Experienced? Have the latest equipment? Professional personnel? Absolutely. Stafford's position themselves as a leading tree trimming company in all of Tampa Bay. With honest professionals and competitive pricing, they'll earn your trust too. In business for over 15 years, Stafford Tree Service is licensed, bonded, and insured to provide you the best tree trimming experience. Call today, 727-546-8786, 7-546-8786, on the web at staffordtreesvc.com.
Biophilia, innate attraction to other living things. It's why people love plants. And around Tampa Bay, Plants, that's Plantz, is bringing nature inside in workspaces and homes by delivering beautiful foliage plants. Our plants increase oxygen and filter out pollutants, reducing stress and improving productivity. And get you in touch with your Biophilia site. Go to plantz.us.
Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb in Real Flowers. What about issues with closing on your newest property? Give him a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we're talking about, well, of course, we can always talk about real estate and things of that nature, but we started off on fungi, which I think is interesting because there are so many, we think of fungi either as a puff ball that comes up in our yard, or we think about the little white mushrooms that we eat, the button mushrooms, or there's a host of other mushrooms. Shiitake mushrooms, there's lice tail, there's all kinds of fungi, and some of them are edible.
Right.
Find out which ones you eat, though. Don't go out there and
indiscriminate.
we choose, because some of them have toxins in them, and it could be your last supper.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it's interesting to mention that, because that's an area that, again, since we're talking about such an interesting topic about fungus, I know people are going, oh man, I don't know why that's interesting, but it is interesting. And one of the things that there is therapeutics that are being made. One of the things that we were talking about in the break is you're on anti-rejection medications.
Right. I mean, I had a heart transplant a year and a half ago, and so
almost 2 years ago.
So the thing for me is, I was reading a little bit. I thought, well, how is this miracle, chemical that they did so that my heart is not rejected?
Right.
And in other people who have livers and kidneys and
they're all on it.
They're all on different forms of and different combinations. But it's usually either fungi or a bacteria type that they've found chemicals that they can synthesize or withdraw or make that help, in my case, keeping me alive. Because in the old days, the white cells in your body would say, oh, this is a foreign organ. We attack it and get rid of it. So you're likely living very long after the transplant because you don't attack the organ.
Right.
Today, you can live sometimes 20, maybe we're hoping in the future 30, 40 years.
Well, the record holder is 34 years.
34 years, I think, is the record holder locally. I know one of my friends' acquaintance, I think it's 23 years out of TGH.
Right.
And we'll give TGH a nice plug. They do a wonderful job. Great. 1,465th heart transplant. And I was so happy that I've remembered the number. And I'm so happy that I'm here.
You should remember the number. I mean, well, the other thing too that I think is interesting is that, especially in fungus, is that, again, we can consume them through mushrooms. We can have them in our food and stuff. But again, chemicals and using them in therapeutic drugs, you can, alter the biology in the human way that allows for rejection to be slowed down, or I don't know if that's a word, but it is now, slowed down. It could be slowed down. It's amazing to me that what might be a poison at one potency is a therapeutic at the right dose. So, things we say, or you've said for a long time, is that dose makes the poison.
That's true. A lot of chemicals are good used at the right, the right rate. Salt on your food's probably not a problem.
Right.
Salt's going to kill you.
Right. It's not good.
Keeping your house clean with Clorox, great idea. Too much chlorine, and you're breathing it in your house when you're cleaning, you ought to be wearing a mask, because it's a toxin.
It's a toxin.
If I told you the same chlorine in a high concentration was used by the Germans during World War I, mixed with some other chemicals, you would say, hey, you can die from this. So it all depends on the dose.
Exactly. And the other thing too that is interesting is if you, I can't tell you the name of it because I don't remember it right at the moment, but if you are a Netflix subscriber, free for them, there's like a 4-part series on, again, it's based on fungus and mushrooms and how that's being used for addiction. So once again, the idea is, and it has a very high success rate, especially for alcohol addiction. A lot of times these people will, I'm trying to remember the name, the ingredients. I want to say
psilocybin.
That's it. Psilocybin. And that is the root ingredient inside some of these. Again, they're learning.
Which is what the youngsters used to use for
right.
trip.
Right. But one of the things that they're doing is they're using it in a way that's different. We're not using it specifically for payment value. They're using it for a therapeutic value to get you to get your brain to outsmart yourself, if you will. And because really battling with addiction is compulsion. You're dealing with this innate desire. I mean, if you see a cigarette smoker, and we all have in life,
Right.
There are some that literally, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be a chopstick, but as long as they have something in their hand that makes them feel like they have a cigarette in, they're happy because it's more emotion they're using. And that is a compulsion. That's part of the addiction process. So again, the whole reason I mention all of this is that, go on Netflix, watch this series, because I think it was very fascinating, because you have some of these people that are literally on their way out. They're drinking themselves to death, okay, through being severe alcoholics. And then they go through this treatment and they chart the people's progress. And these people do very, very well. Again, this is done in a medical setting. This isn't done with, I know a guy named Harry and he's in a van, on the end of the street, and, he'll take care of it. Okay, it's not that. This is done in a very clinical type way, and it's done in a capacity to try to help you through a process that you're failing on your own. And again, I mean, that's, and I just think that we have to look at alternative ways to help people that are suffering from addiction.
Yeah, I've never smoked, but I've been, parents both did.
Right.
And in fact, when I was a kid, I would say half of the adult population I knew. Talked to my brother-in-law, which I hadn't talked to in a long time, in Wyoming, and he lost a couple of toes because of smoking. And they said, "Look,
from like oxygen deprivation."
Yep.
Okay.
He's a big, tall guy,
right?
And
so the blood's having trouble getting it all the way down to the toes because he's 6'4", and so that makes perfect sense.
So he had gangrene. They said, we either take off these toes, or you're going to spread further your leg. And so he decided, and I'm surprised because he was a pretty chronic, heavy smoker.
Right.
He said he's cut his drinking way back. He used to be a pretty heavy drinker too. I mean, a lot of people who did the things are smart.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a curse almost. Is that the smarter you are, the more addictive personality that you have, and so I think people need to watch that. So again, I guess for me, I'm in good shape. I'm not that smart, so I didn't have that problem.
Well, you're pretty smart, but thank God you didn't go for the addiction routine. But I was talking with him, and he said, "Look, I had to make the decision. Either I quit, or I lose my leg."
And that thing, because at the end of the day, most addicts will say, "Hey, they want to walk to be able to."
You stay with us as the Plant Talk, Real Estate, and Maybe Talk continues here on AM 860. The Answer.
Interested in a home consult? Remember, you can reach Stan at 727-423-4794 or on the web at askmrgreenthumb.com. Broken air conditioner? Keep your home's AC running smoothly all year long with these AC. With thousands of active commercial and residential customers, Easy Breezy AC cares about those in need. Donate 2 cans of food and receive $20 off a $79 service call. Go to easybreezyac.com and use promo code GREENTHUMB for an additional $10 off your service call. Call 727-86-HVAC. Life's hard. Comfort's not. Did you know that Stan DeFreitas Mr. Greenthumb can come to your house and examine your plants, trees, and palms? His knowledge can help you become the envy of your neighborhood with lush, green, healthy trees that don't just live but thrive. Palms and oak trees are part of what makes Florida a beautiful place to live. But it gets and they're often cut down. We offer ways to save your trees. Call or text Stan today at 727-4794 or go online to askmrgreenthumb.com. That's ASKMR greenthumb.com. Back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb Real Estate Show. Connect online at askmrgreenthumb.com. Got questions about gardening, real estate, or both? Give him a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
And we're talking about, we always talk about plants and trees. Fungi tends to fit in there as well as one of the major problems that you can have. And I mentioned it years ago. A lady called me up on the radio and she goes, I think you've made this term, this fungus up, this blight. I talked about a blight on some of the tomatoes and stuff. And I said, well, go back and read the Old Testament. It's full of blight and pestilence, which is blight being a fungus,
Right.
and pestilence being insects. I said, so no, Greenthumb didn't invent insect and fungi. They were here before us, I think.
Yeah, she was giving a whole lot of credit there.
I thought, gosh, when did I get so lucky to make the world?
Exactly. Well, in switching gears, we do talk a little bit about real estate. And one of the things I might mention too is I always like ask the lawyer section in the For a Realtor magazine. So I'm gonna read you a question that was that doesn't necessarily mean you have to answer it. I'm just gonna read
Sometimes we do, and sometimes we answer them right. If not, we'll come up with a answer that's close.
at the end of the day, I don't profess to be an attorney, but I do profess to know that I know an attorney if I get into an area that's a little bit gray, or an area that I don't have much experience in. And I encourage everyone that out there, here's a PSA for the day. If you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know, and be okay with it.
And that's the reason there are lawyers and doctors
Right.
and Indian chiefs.
And guess what? They sometimes get wrong. So, but anyway, in this, it says it's talking about contracts, and it says a buyer submitted an offer that included an escalation addendum in the contract. The seller countered by removing the escalation addendum and changing the purchase price to the buyer's purchase price described in the addendum. The seller do this.
I would tend to think, you have a right to say, here's what I want to do. And then they have the yes, you can, no, you can't. Because if you don't have the right to write your own contract, but amend the contract.
Right. And that's what they're doing. They're amending an existing
Both
contract.
parties
So,
would probably have to initial it.
yeah. So, and again, you're in the offer stage, back and forth, you're negotiating.
Sure.
I mean, that's essentially what you're doing. And it says, and so the lawyer answers, yes, offer with an escalation addendum is still just an offer.
Sure.
It says the seller can accept, reject, or counter the offer. And in this instance, the seller has proposed a counteroffer. And therefore, the escalation addendum includes a warning to buyers that the use of the addendum, and it says reveals buyer's highest and best offer, which is not necessarily buyer's best interest. So they may not necessarily agree to that. And sometimes, again, it's when you have an offer, it's just that it's an offer. The seller it's just the timing that we are history, and timing does matter. But she's in a situation where she's just fizboing it. So she, again, for sale by owner, that's and there are people that aren't familiar with that term. But she's just fizboing it. And so what she's done is she put it on the market, again, not through an MLS system, multiple listing services. I give people a hard time, but real estate also has its own lingo and terminology and acronyms that we use too.
I call it a drive-by, and you might see it.
Yeah. but so anyway, she ultimately had 27 showing because it was decently priced, it was moderately priced, and it's a nice house.
So she acted as a real estate agent on her own behalf.
She did, and she even had some real estate agents call her up and say, hey, I wouldn't mind showing your property, but I'd like to know that I was going to get something for it.
Yeah, commission.
Now, I will say I think she was a little chintzy. Okay, she was saying, well, you can show it, and I'll pay 1%.
So I probably wouldn't want to show it.
Right. So so what will happen is a lot of agents will say, no, I really don't want to show it for 1% because, but it is an $850,000 home, so there is $8,500 that an agent potentially could make even at 1%.
So some of them would say yes.
So some might say yes. I don't like the process of that because what you're doing is you're devaluing what that person does. And one of the things I did tell her is, in this particular market and in your particular situation, I totally understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Sure.
But if you were working a 40-hour week, which she is not, and you if you didn't have plenty of free time, then you really can't do these things.
Taking time to show up properties a lot, and often people don't show up on time.
They don't show up
You
on
make
time.
there for an hour while someone's coming.
Right.
There's and all agents out there who are listening know how that can happen. And as soon as you're ready to leave the driveway, then the person shows.
Right. And the other thing I would advise too in FSBOs is just remember that, one of the reasons you're paying a real estate agent is that you're also not just paying them for showing the property. I know that's the first thing that's coming into your mind, but you're also paying them for their experience of having been through a lot of deals, seen a lot of things that you haven't seen. And they're going to be able to detect when a scam comes up in a way that you won't. This is something else I tried to explain to her too, but I got kind of a muddled look, like I had 3 heads and was on planet Mars.
You only have 2.
I only have 2.
Yeah.
So anyways, and again, this often happens. And again, one of the things I will say, no offense to other people, but I will find that people with advanced education really are harder to convince on certain things because they've been so successful in their respective fields. It's harder to in their respective fields or to even acknowledge that is a respectable field in and of itself, which to me does a great disservice to the entire real estate industry, but that's a different topic for a different day. What I will say is that, back to my point is that you're not just paying them to put a sign in the yard. You're not just paying them to tell you how to declutter your home. You're also paying them for their experience in life that they've been through and being able to spot when you're about to be scammed. And yes, there are lots of people out there trying to scam. One of the things that happens a lot, and it's not technically a scam, but it could be a large waste. A lot of people out there do wholesaling. And wholesaling, for those that don't know, wholesaling is when people will go in a property and they will want to buy. Either they'll have the intention to buy it themselves, and then they'll just try to flip the property for just a small amount of money, $5,000 to $10,000, and they'll do that by having something in the contract that says, "Hey, I have the right to assign this contract to somebody else."
Sure.
So they have to be able to close it, potentially be able to close it. But the reality of it is some of these people are wholesaling and they have no intention of ever buying the property, and they're just looking to be the guy that puts themselves in line for someone else to buy it.
It used to be done in condos a lot.
It used to be done a lot in condos, but it happens in every sector of
Sure.
real estate. And matter of fact, I tend to think that even in the very last deal that we were involved with, I think there was a prospective commercial buyer that was pretending he was interested, and then ultimately it probably fell apart because what then didn't look good now. And so again, the idea of, and not only that, but the property was way overpriced. And in my opinion, still way overpriced. So lots of luck there. But nonetheless, I just, paying the agent because they've seen this, they've been through that, they got the T-shirt, they understand all falls that are going to come along that you want. So I guess it's okay to be a FSBO if everything goes perfect and you don't have any problems. And, and it's not like you call up an agent, they're not going to give you a one-off. I think it would be very rude. And let me say this again. I think it'd be very rude to call up an agent that you didn't use on your transaction and ask them a bunch of advice.
Sure.
It's very rude.
But that's what people do sometimes.
And I know they do that. And I know they do that. But we play my number a lot, in commercial breaks. Do not write down my number if that's the kind of thing you have. Just take that number and we'll put it right into the generator, because I don't want people calling and saying, "Oh, could I, do everything myself, hit your brain too, and do it all for free?"
Well, same thing with me. I mean, I looked at a condo yesterday and I said, I don't mind looking at a few problems on the condo.
Right.
But
there's a healthy line.
There's a consult fee I normally charge to go out and look at something.
Right.
And
I said to you too, I said, "Oh, and where do I switch to for your time of looking at this
When I
for
didn't
free?"
because I was
Yeah,
doing
I get it.
for
I get it.
relative.
No, I understand that. And I think it's a very nice thing. Anybody that is an expert in any field, there should be, a little bit of compensation for the time that's spent for the time that they give to you, and again, all that be upfront and understood.
I find a lot of doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs do call me from time to time for consulting to look at their yard to see what's going on, because they do work on time and they realize that your time is of certain value. And I mean, I work for attorneys for hundreds of cases. I worked in it doing, and I expect, the lawyer gets what he gets. I expect to get the same, not the same amount, but I expect to get a professional. I'm going to turn in a professional report, or I should say we are, because it often is helping to count and verify the plant material, especially in a take area. If it's in a main case,
Yeah.
We've gone to different places all over the state. I mean, from handle to the keys.
And again, I don't care what industry you're in, but I will say, lawyers and doctors, it's a position that's already elevated in society, and there's already this expectation that that's a job that is respected, and that and that you're going to have to pay for it. All other industries outside of that get questioned more about their bills, and I don't necessarily think that's fair. I think if you're an expert in one field, and if you're an expert in another, you both have equal merit, but that doesn't always seem to add up in society. Now, we put in my opinion, we put in the consulting bills that are reasonably priced, and sometimes they get balked at, but attorneys go in and they're going to charge you 30 to 40%, depending on whether or not it goes to trial, and nobody balks at it. It's an understood.
Yeah.
And I guess that's become a societal institutionalized concept that's just accepted. And I'm going to tell you that it's not always that's not a good it's not a fair playing field.
Sure. Well, I think it's funny that somebody would complain, let's say, about 3% or 4%
Right.
or 5% for
A
a real estate
value.
commission,
Yeah.
and yet you might pay half of your commission or 40% of your commission to an attorney and not think anything about it.
Only pay if we win.
That's right. Hey, we would have you as a sponsor as well.
Exactly.
Anyway, we're here to help answer your questions, plants, trees, and real estate here on AM 860. The
Want to talk real estate? Remember, you can reach 423-4794 or on the web at askmrgreenthumb.com.
Why choose Stafford Tree Service? Is it because they're experienced, have the latest equipment, and friendly professional personnel? Absolutely. Stafford positioned themselves as a leading tree trimming company in all of Tampa Bay. With honest professionals and competitive pricing, they'll earn your trust too. In business for over 15 years, Stafford Tree Service is licensed, bonded, and insured to provide you the very best tree trimming experience. Call today, 727-546-8786. 727-546-8786. On the web at StaffordTreeSVC.com.
Biophilia, our innate attraction to other living things. It's why people love plants. And around Tampa Bay, Plants, that's PLANTZ, is bringing nature inside in workspaces and homes by delivering beautiful foliage plants. Our plants increase oxygen and filter out pollutants, reducing stress and improving productivity. And get you in touch with your biophilic side. Go to plantz.us.
Welcome back to the Ask Mr. Greenthumb Real Estate Show. Got questions about perennial flowers? What about issues with closing on your property? Give them a call at 727-254-7127. That's 727-254-7127. And now your hosts, Stan and James DeFreitas.
One of the things I was noticing recently was we're seeing a lot of, somebody asked me, what are those nice pink-looking trees right now? And it's usually the golden rain. It's the pink papery seed capsule that comes on after those nice little yellow flowers. Yellow flowers only last week or two, but the pink paper capsules will hang on there for weeks and maybe months.
Hmm.
So we're seeing a lot of that in Tampa Bay right now. I just happened to notice that yesterday, and I said, I'm going to remember that.
Pink papery sea
capsule.
capsules. There's a term for today, folks.
Hey, I'm a silver tongue.
There you go.
Yeah, but I do notice things like that. This is a good time of year. One of the best times of the year for vegetables. Broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, all those vegetables that you should be eating.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know you see them on the food chart, and you go, but if you don't like them, you haven't tried them in different ways. You should be eating some of these crucifers. The family is called crucifers. That's cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, Brussels sprouts.
It's the right station for that. It's not crucified.
Crucifers. Well, the name comes from the idea of a cross.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so crucifers, you should be eating them because they're good for you. A lot of people go,
good fiber.
Well, yeah, fiber is important. Vitamin C is important. B vitamins are important. Calcium, zinc, magnesium, potassium. They're all, and you get that in a plastic bag that's dyed orange and chippy.
Oh, I think it's in my energy.
Well, your energy bar too.
Yeah, I think it is actually. I think it's
and that's probably healthier for you than a lot of choices that most people.
I look at this thing as a candy bar.
Well, it is connected, but
yeah, I mean it's using sugar alcohol, so that's good. I don't know. If something has 0 grams in it, why do we need to include it at all?
Why do we put something in if it's 0?
Yeah, it makes no sense to me.
But, 0 means none. Of course, then sometimes they'll say, well, we say 0 here, but we mean something else over here.
Yeah, that's probably how they can make it taste good, is by using the sugar alcohol.
I'm wondering how you can. Yeah, those I've had those before, and they're usually pretty tasty.
Yeah, very tasty. But anyway,
Well,
we're nuts for nuts on this show.
Hey.
But anyways, yeah. So another quick real estate related question that was asked. It says, my brokerage firm has a Florida realtors form exclusive to sell listing agreement. The seller has been extremely challenging to work with, and we really just want out of the listing. The seller's not in default of any of their obligations under the listing. This is just purely a personality conflict. The seller says they will not allow us to terminate the listing. Can the listing brokerage terminate the listing anyway?
Probably depends on what it says in the contract.
Well, she's already admitted one thing that I noticed right away was that your seller is not in default in any obligations under the listing agreement.
So they haven't broken any of the rules that we give you easy out.
Correct.
Normally, I would say you normally want to keep.
You're normally trying to keep this. Yeah.
I've had a few that were problem I sometimes have had in the past is, let's say you're coping with another agent.
Uh-huh.
The other agent tells them the property is worth twice what you know it is. You can't sell it at the lower price that you've committed them to.
Right.
And yet the other agent goes, oh no, if this were the Taj Mahal in India, it could be worth $3 million.
Well, sure. And if you're going to list the property as something that it isn't, and try to sell it as if it were something more valuable, then again, I mean, it's kind of like having a radio station that's one thing that it isn't when you find out later it's on your show. So yeah, I mean, you try to sell something as it is. You don't try to sell something on what it could be. I mean, when Stan and I try to sell a house, I don't take a 1-story and go, this home, imagine it being a 3-story home, and imagine that on the backyard that it isn't a swamp, that it were on the beach, and try to sell it in that imaginary way.
But he normally comes on with this, imagine if you will, through sight and sound. If we had the Empire State Building on this property, what would it be worth?
Right, exactly. I mean, it's one of the silly kind of things that you see agents do from time to time. And another thing that let me get something off my chest about something that's irritating me about agents. The very first picture on a listing is supposed to be the home, the front of the home. And what's happening now? Oh, I know what I want. I got the drum footage. You know, I want to show those there to the water. And so what I'm going to do is put an X where the home is, and so they can go there to the water. No, you take a picture front of the house so that they know what they're buying.
That's what the listing's supposed to be.
That's in the MLS. I don't care what MLS service you're working with. That is the rules. Okay. If you want to put a picture of how close it is to the water, you can, but it's not your photo.
It should
Okay.
be second or third or fourth
Yeah.
down the road.
I don't care where you put it at, but not your first one. It really annoys me that people do
I thought
that.
they were checking on that and sending it
They,
back.
they are if somebody rats on somebody, but other than that, there's just too many listings out there for them to
So
play.
enough goes through.
Yeah. I mean, then they tell realtors, well, don't be following other real estate agents reporting bad behavior. Oh, nobody would do their job then.
Yeah. So are you guys going to do it? Well, no.
No.
But if we did do it, you might.
And I'm
be in
not picking
violation.
any MLS service. I'm picking on all MLS services, not any one in particular.
Equal opportunity.
That's right. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where people, you know, we and again, here's another rule. Okay, for all of you other real estate agents out there, this is an unwritten rule. You must update your photo every 10 years. Okay, when you come out and I see your photo and it was taken from 1975, and you know, back when you still had curves. Okay, look, you don't anymore. You need to get a new photo, and I need to know what you look like.
You mean I
Okay,
can't use my 1975 photo?
no, because you don't look like the same person anymore. And I won't even know who you are when you get out there. And I see these, glamour shot photos that were taken way back when, and they don't look like themselves anymore. And I don't care that they look. None of us are going to look as good as we did 30 years ago. I get that, but the idea that you don't want to like admit the fact you got older and you're going to use this old photo that doesn't even look like you anymore, it's not very helpful to the client.
I figure I'm Benjamin Button. I'm actually going the other way.
Well, you have had a thing biologically that most of us have not.
Well, that's my new hire.
But anyway, that's like my. And you see memes of this too. There's a guy, I forget, I think it might have been Jim Ong who put it the day. It was a picture of real estate photos, and it was a picture of Barbie, and then what the real estate really looked like, and had been run over by a car, and it was all black from a blowtorch.
I got Jim.
Yeah.
Jim's funny. He's
Yeah.
a great guy. We love him.
Yeah.
As so many of the other agents we've worked with over
But
the
it
years.
illustrates the point of what I'm trying to say about real estate agent photos that they put on these business cards. You're going, geez, what happened? Life is tough to you. You didn't sell enough houses.
Well, one of the things I would go back to plants.
Okay,
and
that's
that would
positive.
be with plants. There's a certain ability. I advise you to do that every day. Look at some flowers. Your homework for the week is go out and look at some flowers in your yard or your neighborhood that you have not noticed before. Because so many times today, and I see it especially with young people, but older people too, they're spending hours and hours and hours on their phone and their computer, on their keyboard.
Yep.
And what are we doing in life if we don't take time to smell the roses? I sound crazy. I go out almost every day. I look for a flower in my yard. I look for the rose. If the rose, I can go out and smell the rose. I like it. Or
You take time to smell
the roses. And I look at the hibiscus.
All right.
And I look at my ginger. And I look at my Cuban oregano. And I'll take a cutting of herbs. I bring them inside and try to use them during the week.
My dog, I have this beautiful dog, and I take her and my other dog, we go over to their house quite a bit, and my dog always smells like it's, she's been diving in some kind of spices.
It's called Cuban or French oregano.
Yeah, I mean, she's being seasoned, if you will, when she goes over to play, because she goes in there and she's a beagle hound mix, and she spends hours and hours and hours just chasing around lizards, and she just makes it this wonderful little she has. But she always smells like she's been through a herb shop.
Well, she's been at Grandpa's if she comes back like an herb garden.
Yeah, but
She could smell.
that's true, and she has. actually, smell in particular, since you do seem to have some raccoons that leave behind some unpleasantness.
When I know you're coming over, I usually go out and do a patrol trying to make sure that hair doesn't have anything to roll in.
Right. Well, hey, we want to encourage you to stay tuned for Dr. Bill, who's coming up right on after us. And we thank you for taking the time to listen to us. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Take time to smell the roses and enjoy life. And as Teddy used to say, live it up. Five, 4, 7, 1.